and it's all yours.
Thanks, Mr. Carter. Good morning. Dude, it is early. So bear with me here. I'm not much of a morning person. Stick around. We'll see what happens here over the next few minutes. A couple of things to expect. I am going to hopefully enlighten you with some information about a bunch of stuff it sounds like you already know. I look at the celebrity lineup of speakers before me. I'll try to keep up with them. At the end, I will gladly open it up for questions. We can talk about tasers, car chases, shootouts. We can talk about, can the cops pull me over for this? Can they do that? If you want to know about Aaron Rodgers and the New York Jets last night, I watched football instead of Netflix. Yeah, they're cursed. World peace, politics, religion. I answer all questions, and I know you have some things that you have to work on for tomorrow. Maybe we'll have some time at the end to do that. Let's go way back in the history books, way back in the 1990s. Many of you were never around at that point. I was sitting in that seat where you are in a little high school over in Illinois, thinking I was going to play in the NBA. I was a relatively successful high school basketball player, went to college on a scholarship, and my game plan for life was to make money shooting hoops from 19 feet 9 inches, which is a 3-point line, because dudes like me don't play inside, and I couldn't dunk. So I get to college, and I find out that the NCAA requires you to go to class, and you have to attend it in order to play basketball. And I really didn't have a game plan. So my coach said, well, you know, a lot of our student athletes take criminal justice. And I thought, oh, no. I'm a farm kid. I have no desire to be a cop. I don't want anything to do with that. There's got to be other options. And he said, no, you don't really understand. A lot of our student athletes take criminal justice. And he kind of gave me the wink. Like that was for my cue to pick up on, hey, this is what you should do. So I enrolled, and I took criminal justice as a major. That was 27, almost 28 years ago. This is the only job I've ever had. I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about the Iowa State Patrol, because it's the only agency I've ever worked for. I'm very familiar with all of these other ones, as well as other law enforcement agencies. But if you're not interested in being a cop, if you're not interested in going into the FBI or the CIA, things of that sort, I also like to include some stuff that I think is pretty general for any type of career. One of the things that I will assure you is that law enforcement and public safety, for that matter, isn't for everybody. And that's okay. There are people that are not going to be cut out to have this job, and that's fine. There will be other opportunities for you in life to figure out what you want to do. And if you don't know what you want to do yet, I have no idea what grade all of you are in. I assume we have some upperclassmen as well as maybe even a few freshmen. You got plenty of time to figure that out. But at some point, you're going to have to do something. As I've told my own kids as a father of 3, at some point, you are not going to be able to live in my basement for the rest of your life, playing Xbox and PlayStation and having your phone paid for. You're going to have to get a career, a job that will allow you to put gas in your car, that will allow you to go to eat somewhere from time to time, to put a roof over your head. So there are a lot of things out there, but in your particular instance, you're going to have to figure that out. So as we look at jobs in law enforcement, this I know. 27 or 28 years from now, when you're in my spot, I promise you there will be a need for police officers. Law enforcement is not going away. We've had cops in the world since Wyatt Earp used to walk the streets back in the Wild Wild West. So that is a career that is going to be around well into the future. And that's something to think about. Not everybody considers that when they pick a career at that particular time. So please get in a spot where you can see the screen. There'll be some interaction here in a little bit where we'll allow you to figure some stuff out as well, but it's not difficult. If I can do it, you can. So the Iowa State Patrol. What's it like being a trooper? Well, it's not like the movie Super Troopers. Now, I like Super Troopers 1. It is by far the better of the 2. If you have seen Super Troopers 2, I'm sorry, that's probably 90 minutes you're not going to get back in your life. But the first one's way better. There are a lot of things that happen that we base careers on from TV and the movies. I don't know if that's always the case. For instance, my wife is a teacher now in the Burlington Community School Districts. We associate teachers with having an apple on their desk. and things of that sort. I don't know that she's ever had a student bring her an apple in all the years that she's taught school. So you should go into a career knowing exactly what it does. Don't really base it off of things you've been told. This is a fantastic start in what a law enforcement career would look like by being involved in this class. And I think it will certainly benefit a lot of people going forward. The Iowa State Patrol, again, is an organization that is involved in a lot of stuff across the state. And some of those things are relatively simple and not newsworthy, which is great. I'd rather not be in the spotlight, especially in the national media spotlight for law enforcement, because typically this day and age, it's not a positive thing. So you kind of want to stay out of that spotlight. But we got a lot of things going on in our organization, and it's just a kind of a capture of all the stuff that happens from time to time in and around. So let's talk about Iowa. There will be some of you that cannot wait to leave Burlington, Iowa and go somewhere else in this wonderful world. And there will be others that cannot wait to leave the entire state of Iowa and go somewhere else. And that's fine. But those careers, again, in law enforcement specifically, will certainly be involved in the communities that you settle in. Now, I'm a fan of Iowa. I think Iowa is a great place to call home. There are some benefits to me about it, and I'm going to share them with you that maybe you've never thought about. Let's say, for instance, you want to go on vacay someday with your family and friends, and you live on the East Coast, and you want to fly out to California. That flight from any airport on the East Coast is going to be significantly more in price than it will from the central continental United States. We're kind of right in the middle. That allows us to fly to the West Coast, the East Coast, we can go north, we can go south. We can be within an airport of lots and lots of possibilities in a matter of minutes. If you live next to JFK, or you live next to some of the major airports, let's say LAX, it may take you that long just to go a few miles to get to that airport terminal. So Iowa's pretty centrally located. We're pretty rural. We have what's known as Midwest values. There's some good things in that, in my opinion. And certainly living in Southeast Iowa is a little bit better for me. But if you want to move to Des Moines and live in Ankeny, or live in Waukee, or some of the places in and around the Des Moines Metro, about 10% of our population in Iowa now lives in and around Des Moines. It's grown substantially over the last few years. We only have 3.1 million people in the entire state. There are more people that live in the city of Chicago than in the entire state of Iowa. We do not have a huge population base. And once you get out of some of those metropolitan areas, and we wouldn't even call them major metropolitan areas, Des Moines is not going to be one of the most popular cities in the state for a number of residents, or in the country for a number of residents. We're pretty rural. We got a lot of middle of nowheres. We got a lot of cornfields and bean fields to drive around, which gives us about 114,000 miles worth of roadways. That's where law enforcement comes into play, because if there's a crash in the middle of nowhere on one of those roads, somebody has to respond. So as a member of the State Patrol, you're going to have to like to drive a little bit. We're going to get you out and log some miles in our organization. I don't know what the average amount of miles that the Burlington PD puts on in a shift, 30, 50?
Probably about
55 to 60 miles. We probably put on an average of 200 miles in a shift, maybe 300. So you're going to have to drive a little bit. That's part of it. And we'll get into maybe some of the differences as well going on. We got two of the busiest roads in the world that meet right in the center of our state. Interstate 80, which runs from the west coast to the east coast, and Interstate 35, which runs from the southern tip of Texas all the way to Canada, crisscross right in Des Moines, Iowa. That means there are a lot of out-of-state travelers on those roadways. If you drive on those points, you will see lots and lots of cars. If you're driving between here and Mediapolis on Highway 61, you're going to see a few cars, but nothing as it compares to that. That also brings in, out-of-state contacts and things of that sort. Currently, this is the leadership at the governor's level, and a lot of people think that Iowa is a great place to live as well. Now, when you look at state law enforcement, we have what's known as the Iowa Department of Public Safety. The Iowa Department of Public Safety has multiple divisions within it, with the Iowa State Patrol being one of those divisions. This is the only agency, as I mentioned earlier, that I've ever worked for This is the only job I've ever had. I am a uniformed police officer. It would not take long for someone to figure out real quick if I'm attempting to buy or sell them some sort of narcotic on the streets of Burlington that I am a cop. I'm not an undercover dude. I've never had a canine. I've never kicked indoors with the TAC team. There are a lot of things that I do not have experience in, but I'm somewhat familiar with them. Why I tell you that is our department offers what's known as lateral transfer within divisions. So at some point when you get hired, you may get tired of doing the same old thing within that particular job frame. Members of the State Patrol, you're probably going to do some traffic law enforcement, and you're going to cover car crashes. That is the bread and butter of being a trooper in the Iowa State Patrol. You're going to write some speeding tickets, you're going to enforce some speed laws and other criminal or traffic laws, as well as covering car crashes. Maybe that gets old after a few years, and you want to go investigate fires and arsons with the fire marshal's office. Or maybe you want to work at the casino and do some things with gaming. Maybe you want to get into the DCI for general crim purposes. We have all of that, and you don't have to go back through a separate academy. That is a huge benefit for our particular department, is the opportunity to lateral transfer within other divisions. So if you are interested in that, I would rather you go to the dpscareers.com website, and you can see everything you need to know from that standpoint and what it takes to get from one division to the other. And currently we are hiring. I think probably every law enforcement agency in America is hiring at this point in time. We are in need of qualified men and women to fill positions within our departments and certainly within all of those divisions. So the State Patrol, again, has been around for a long time, 1935. I won't bore you with the history of the details of our organization. We got a lot of years in. There's a lot of things that are similar, a lot of things that actually have changed. The overall job description would be relatively similar to what you would see any Iowa law enforcement agency. Again, all of this stuff is part of it. There would be hundreds, if not thousands, of other things that we don't list what the job may entail, and obviously that's something that changes. Here's one of the greatest benefits of being a cop, in my opinion. One of the greatest benefits. Every day can be a little bit different, and you don't have to do the same thing. Now, if you're somebody that enjoys routine and you enjoy not a lot of thought and effort into a job, maybe a manufacturing job, you're working at Weingard, you're working over at a factory in Mount Pleasant or somewhere else, and your only job is to put this piece in there and send it down the line to the next person. Okay, that's your career. If you're looking for something different, never knowing what the day might hold, maybe law enforcement, being a police officer in an agency would be a benefit. You can see all of the stuff here. I know that talking to Mr. Carver, he had a bunch of this stuff that he's already talked about and things of that sort. There's some stuff on here that's not listed. I've probably seen in person more University of Iowa football games than any of you, if not all of you combined. So we provide security at University of Iowa and Iowa State football games. We do a lot of security in and around the Iowa State Fair. I have been to the Iowa State Fair every year of my career, except the one year it was canceled because of COVID. So you're going to spend some time in Des Moines at the Iowa State Fairgrounds. I've seen concerts, I've seen tractor pulls, I've seen horse shows, I've seen queen competitions and pageants, you name it. There's some type of duty that happens at the Iowa State Fair that's going to involve the Iowa State Patrol. So there's a lot of stuff on here. The other big thing that you probably won't see listed that Iowa is unique, I have met more presidential candidates than ever before, because Iowa is the first kickoff state in the presidential election year in and year out. No longer for the Democrat Party, but the Republican Party still holds its first caucus in and around Iowa. So if you want to run for president someday, and I encourage all of you to take up that mantle, you would do a great job. You're going to spend some time in Iowa. You're going to come to our state and campaign, and you're probably going to get led around the state to various venues by a member of the Iowa State Patrol. Now, some of that has changed because there are so many more people that jump into the process earlier than ever before, and we can't provide them transportation 3 years out of an election year. But especially once they've become a qualified candidate or someone that is recognized before they get Secret Service protection, the Iowa State Patrol plays a role in many of the transportation needs and things of that sort for those candidates. We do have some requirements. So this is unique in law enforcement compared to other careers. My sister-in-law is a major player in the banking industry in a town called Quincy, Illinois. When she interviews someone to work at her bank, there are going to be a lot of things that she doesn't ask them or isn't able to go into detail about versus what law enforcement would be. So here are some of the bare bone basics and what most law enforcement agencies would require as it relates to getting employed. One of them is you're going to have to be a citizen of the United States. I've done some career fairs before, let's say, for instance, before Iowa Wesleyan shut down in Mount Pleasant, and people would come in and they'd say, hey, I don't want to be an officer here. And I said, where are you from? You know, I'm from Honduras, I'm from Colombia, I'm from Brazil. Okay, are you a United States citizen? No, I'm here on a different deal for education. Well, then I can't talk to you about keeping a job here until you obtain that particular citizenship. The minimum age for being a trooper is 22 years of age. Now that's a little bit misleading because we have a district called Post 16, which is Capitol Police duties in and around the Capitol where we could hire you before that. But in order to be a road trooper, you got to be 22 years of age. In order to be a DCI agent, 22 years of age. That would not be the case with the Burlington Police Department. That would not be the case with the Des Moines County Sheriff's Office or other law enforcement agencies around the state. You can start working for them at 18. You have to at least possess a high school diploma or a GED. This is probably one of the most misleading statements on our website and what you're going to see in front of you today. I do not remember the last person that we hired that only had a high school diploma or a GED. You're going to have a step beyond that. It could be in a variety of things. You could go into a branch of the United States military, and you may have never spent a single day in college in your life, but if you've been assigned to SEAL Team 6, we are 100% sure you can do the job. You understand what this particular role is about. You may have a degree in business. You may have a degree in elementary education. We don't care. We can teach you how to do the job, but you're going to have to show that you've done something from 18 up to 22. So there's some unknowns there of what that may involve going forward. You'll figure that out, but we probably haven't hired somebody with just one of those, I don't know, in at least 40 years probably. I know 30 years for sure. You have to have some of the things here. Some of this stuff you can control, some of it you can't. One of them is vision. You got to be able to see in color and identify certain things, because if the red car robs the Casey's on Summer Street, you can't pull over the green car. We want the red car as the one being pulled over. So there are some basics from that standpoint. The corrected and uncorrected gets a little technical, all of this other stuff, and many of these things are set up by the Iowa Law Enforcement Academy and would apply to every law enforcement agency in the state. These are not unique to the Iowa Department of Public Safety, as well as some other basics. When you start into our process, there are going to be a lot of similarities for us as well as other agencies. Other agencies typically establish what's known as, blanking on the name of that list, what do we call that? If you're on the list for the sheriff's office, I'll get to it in a second, doesn't matter. What is it? No, that's probably a bad one to be on. Yeah, that, you don't want, if you're on that list, you've done something awful. So, or at least maybe not truthful in your particular career. I'll think of it here in a second. But you're basically going to go through a screen, you're going to start online, you're going to fill out an application. You're going to have to obtain some minimal physical fitness standards by taking a test. You're going to have to run a little bit. You're going to have to do some push-ups, you're going to do some sit-ups, and I think there's a sit and reach or maybe another component of flexibility. What's that? That one's gone. Okay, so we've got 3. Run, push-ups, sit-ups. I thought we had one more, but we might not. It's going to be based on age and gender. So you're going to have to establish a score. And once you get through that, we'll move you into the next phase. This is the next phase, which is a standardized police test called the post test. Again, you'll look through some of those things, and one of the areas that they are going to test you on is math. And it's my understanding still to this day, we do not allow the assistance of a calculator or your iPhone to figure out some mathematical problems. Now, I personally don't know if that's the way to go. Literally, we live in the year 2023 where people have a phone and they can use a calculator if they need to add some stuff up, but that's where we're at now. After passing all of those things, you're going to go to an oral board interview. Now, here's where being a cop and other careers have something in common. If you go to work for my sister-in-law at the bank, you go to work for Casey's, somebody within that organization is probably going to ask you some questions. They're going to interview you. Maybe it's a little bit more detailed than others, but our oral board interview is going to be great detail. One of the things that I've done is sat on oral board interviews and talked to people that want to have a job with the state patrol. And we start out with some basic stuff. Tell me a little bit about yourself. Now, I would consider that a softball question. So if you're lobbing one in there, you need to hit one out of the park. This is what I want you to hit out of the park. Tell me a little bit about yourself. And I see college graduates, members of the military that have done wonderful things, that sit there and they don't say anything. And I'm like, tell me about your favorite dog. You got a cat? You got a sports team? You got any hobbies? Anything? Well, I don't know. It's all kind of listed there on my resume and blah, blah, blah. That's going to be probably a hard sell. Here's what you're going to need to know about being an effective law enforcement officer, in my opinion. You got to talk to people. This is my generational worry about all of you as young adults, and all of you in the room are young adults. I'm not so sure your communication skills are as good as what they could be. You're certainly able to communicate in other areas of life. You have no problem sending somebody a text message. And you can line up a text string that is as long as my arm times 1,000,000. You have no problems communicating in wonderful social media apps like TikTok and Snapchat and Instagram and the 5 million other ones I don't know anything about. But we're still kind of old school in law enforcement. You're going to have to talk to people. And more likely than not in our career, when you're talking to someone, they may not be telling you the truth. What? People lie to the popo? Yes, every day. Every day. It's the best part of my job. Why would you say that? Well, if I really think someone is not being truthful, I certainly would not come out and call them a liar. I'm way more professional than that. But I'm going to ask him some more questions. I want to see how big of a hole they're going to dig before we get to the bottom and they realize that I now know what they're telling me is complete BS. Keep digging that hole. In order to get them to talk, you're going to have to be able to communicate. This is an important part of being a cop. This is probably, in my opinion, what sets good cops apart from bad ones. You've got to be able to talk. But maybe more importantly than talking, you got to be able to listen. And you got to be able to figure some things out like this. If that individual walks into my sister-in-law's bank today and wants a loan for a house, they're going to fill out some documentation. She's going to take that paperwork back to her office and let them know in a couple, 3 days. Hey, I'll let you know if we think we can quote this loan for your new house or your new car or whatever you want to buy. I can't answer that right now. Just give me a few days. And the people walk out of the bank waiting for that response. Typically in law enforcement, you don't have 2 or 3 days to make a decision. And sometimes those decisions may involve things like life and death. And then we're talking about split-second decisions. We need people that can not only communicate quickly and effectively, but think on their feet. And this is why it sets lots of individuals apart from our career. As I mentioned at the very beginning, it's not for everybody. This is why we also use a lot of former military members, because they've been in those situations. A lot of them have done some things and have been required to make those decisions rather quickly with effective communication. That Aura Board interview is just kind of the start of the process. And a lot of people get flushed before they make it to the next one, because it's just not worth our time. If they sit there and lock up and they can't tell me one single thing about themselves, how can you consider them to be an effect? Now, maybe they're nervous. We give them the benefit of the doubt. We work out nerves and we work out other things from that standpoint, but it takes a little bit. When you look at the next one, some of you may be familiar with this particular one. Does anybody know what a polygraph exam is? What's that commonly referred to as? Either one of you. A lie detector test, right. How many of you have ever submitted to a polygraph exam? All right, I've submitted to 2. So I'm going to tell you about it. It's kind of weird. They bring you in this little room. They kind of got a machine hooked up. They sit you down in this chair and they hook up a bunch of wires and stuff around your chest to monitor breathing and blood pressures and things of that sort. I am not a polygraph examiner. And they ask you some things. And some of it is based on this. Some of it is based on that. Some of it is based on a background investigation that may have been done. And they want to know the answers to some of those questions. Here's the important thing to know. You should be truthful in all aspects of the application process. I think that's beneficial to all jobs and careers, but certainly into law enforcement. Because more likely than not, when they ask you a question during the polygraph exam, they probably already know the answer. Now, I've used this to my advantage of raising my 3 kids who have now all graduated from West Burlington High School. 2 of them, one graduated from SEC, one's going there now, and I got one out of Morningside. As a father, when they have come home after a day in school earlier in their careers where things have not gone so well, I probably already knew about that. Because 1, their mother taught at the same school they all attended, and 2, when something goes wrong, typically the people in the big office get on the horn and they want to let parents know what went down. So when my son would come home and I would say, Jonah, can you tell me a little bit about 6-hour English class today? That would not be a normal question I would ever ask him as a parent. Typically my questions to my son throughout school were, how was school today? His response, fine. Did you learn anything? No. Anything happen after school? No. And life would go on. So when I would ask him in great detail about a specific time, place, and what went down, he should have known that I already knew the answer. In my opinion, this is the key to the polygraph. They already know the answer. So it's not really about what individuals have done. It's more about, are they going to be truthful about it? No one is expected to be an angel. If you have done some things, you're probably going to be eliminated automatically. That website will tell you that. But let's say you got a speeding ticket. Let's say you got popped in high school for minor in possession of alcohol. We would recognize that probably wasn't the best decision then, but here you are at 22 years age, 5 years later, it's never happened again. You've shown that you've not only seen your ways and the errors of them, you've moved forward. When they say, hey, can you tell me a little bit about what happened on September 12th, 2023? And that individual says, yeah, I wasn't arrested in Des Moines County for anything on that day. And we slide them a copy of their certified criminal history and record and say, this is you, right? Confirm this is your birthday, social security number, whole 9 yards. Yep, that's me. So you're telling me this official entry on this date never occurred? No, wasn't me. That's a problem. You failed the polygraph and you're out. So if you know about certain things, let them know. Let those employment agencies make the decision whether or not that's a disqualifier or not. Now, if you've sold meth and you've become a convicted felon of any sort, shape, you're out. Law enforcement is not your career. And we can't go back in time and change what has happened then. So you're going to have to figure out something else. There would be other automatic disqualifiers as well, again, on that website. You'll have to do some other stuff. You have to take what's known as MMPI, right? Minnesota Multi-Personality Deal. It's a whole bunch of questions about a bunch of stuff that doesn't make sense. Fill it out, you'll be fine. And take a physical exam. So a state doctor is going to look you over to make sure that you are competent to do the job from a physical standpoint. Background officer a background investigation, final offer, DPS. How many of you have ever filled out a resume? What do you put on your resume? Help me out.
Personality traits, things you've done, accomplishments.
Things you've done, accomplishment, great thanks. What else goes on a resume? Typically at the bottom. Usually like 3 or 4 of them. What do we call those? Former jobs are on there as well. Very bottom we list references, right? People that probably would say something good about us. Do most people list someone on there that's going to say something that's certainly more positive than negative? Yes, yes. When we do a background investigation, we probably talk to people that are outside those references and that realm. So maybe we talk to one of your former high school teachers that you didn't list on there. Mr. Carper knows something about all of you that I'll never know, but he knows. Maybe we talk to some place that was a former neighbor. You've lived at this address for so many years, maybe somebody in the neighborhood, we could call it a neighborhood campus. Find somebody in the neighborhood that recognizes this name and see what they have to say about him. So there are a lot of things that go into that. Again, remember, as you continue to grow older, decisions are important, and probably it does matter. If you get an academy offer and we're going to hire you, we're going to teach you how to be a cop in the DPS Academy. So we have in Iowa a couple of different options. Certain agencies have their own academy. We also have what's known as the Iowa Law Enforcement Academy. Mr. Carper, I'm sure, was a graduate of the Iowa Law Enforcement Academy, as well as every one of those other names that are on that board besides mine. So the Iowa Law Enforcement, and then some agencies have their own academy. The state has their own academy. They're at Camp Dodge, same place where the Iowa Law Enforcement Academy is. Ours is 20 weeks long, Monday through Friday. You get the weekends off. But during Monday through Friday, you are going to be busy. We are going to teach you how to do all kinds of things. How many of you have great experience with firearms? How many of you would consider yourselves a firearm or a gun expert? One in the back of the group. I am not a gun expert. When I went to the DPS Academy in 1996, I had never in my life fired a handgun. And I certainly am not a gun expert as I stand in front of you here today. I know less about guns than probably anybody on the face of the earth. I can make this one function, I can break it down and clean it, and if something goes wrong with it internally, I'm going to need an armorer to fix it. I don't work on my own guns. We like those people that don't consider themselves gun experts because we can show you how to shoot a firearm. We can teach you how to hit a golf ball as a golf pro if you've never picked up a golf club before. But if you've developed some bad habits, like out of the box habits where you pick it up and shoot it sideways, that's going to be an issue. It's not how we shoot firearms. We also teach people the proper terminology that we believe is correct. Therefore, you don't have to relearn things like clips versus magazines. Things of that seem pretty simple, but we believe that they're magazines and then clips go in people's hair. So different terminology from that standpoint is important. We can show you how to drive cars. We can teach you how to drive cars fast. We can teach you how to perform CPR and hook up an AED and do hundreds of other things that are never listed here. Some of them you'll never need to know in your law enforcement career. You'll never probably ever come across and use them, but we have to show that you've been trained. Once you complete that academy, we're going to send you out to our field training program where you're going to do a little bit of the work at the beginning, but by the end of that, you're going to do all the work. And that officer, that is your field training officer, is going to teach you that, show you different styles, because there are multiple different ways to perform the same job. So let's say we've advanced past that. This is the interactive part that all of you get to participate in. You're on the payroll. We've hired you. You've completed the academy. You're out on your very first night of patrol. You're going to need to answer these questions after watching this next video. Are you ready? Let's see if it'll play. If not, I may have to have Mr. Carper just click it and advance it. Can you click on it? Is there a play button at the bottom? Click on the box. Maybe it didn't load. All right, we'll skip that. My bad. We'll figure that out for the next group. One of the things that you're going to need to know is that you're going to be compensated for your job. You're going to need to collect a paycheck. Now, this is an important part during the oral board interview that I left out on purpose, because there are some personal opinions of mine that lead me to believe this is the correct way to go about it, despite what others may tell you. So sometimes people have come in and they've wanted to be a trooper their entire life. And during the oral board interview, I typically, or someone asks them, hey, what would you expect to be paid? What's a good salary for working for the Iowa State Patrol? And others may ask that. What do you want to get paid to work at Casey's? Maybe you already know that on the job app. I don't know. They probably disclose that. People have sat across that table and said this to me. You know what? I just always wanted to be a trooper my entire life. I think they're the greatest law enforcement agency to ever exist in the state of Iowa. I just want to be able to drive a Dodge Charger and wear a brown shirt, put one of them campaign hats on my head, and help people and save lives. You don't have to pay me anything. I'll do the job for free. That's a terrible answer. It's a terrible answer. If you're good at what you do, you should be compensated for it. You should have a realistic expectation of salaries. If you want to become the next Elon Musk, you all know who Elon Musk is? If you want to become the next Jeff Bezos, two of the richest men in the world, law enforcement is not your career. You're not going to be a multimillionaire being a cop, ever. Today or 23 years from now. But we're going to pay you something because you're going to have to pay your phone bill, you're going to have to put gas in your car, a roof over your head, things of that sort. If you want to be a multimillionaire, here is my advice for that in your lifetime going forward. This will make you rich immediately. 1, develop a cure for cancer. If you can wipe that awful disease off of the face of the earth in a variety of forms, you will be compensated for your knowledge and the ability to eliminate that disease. You'll be rich. 2, if you really want to make money, figure out how to secure people's personal information going forward. Because more and more personal information is going to be in areas that maybe somebody accesses. And if you can lock down somebody's personal info and make sure that when they apply for their Target credit card, nobody ever hacks into Target to take their stuff, you're going to be compensated for that. But you're going to be up against the world when it comes to defending that particular piece. That's probably a couple of careers where you could make a lot of money, in my opinion. If you want to work for the Iowa State Patrol today, this is what we're going to pay you. This is Trooper 2 entry. I'm a Trooper 3. Well, what's that mean, Mr. Marlow? Well, it means I've been on this particular job more than 10 years. And after 10 years, you're kind of maxed out of where you're going to get pay-wise. So I make a little bit more money than what you see at the top of the screen. You can find that out. It's all information because I'm a public employee. We're going to give you some benefits. This isn't important when you start a job because you don't think about it. But you should at least know what those benefits are. As you continue to broaden your horizons in life, you may find out you're responsible for other people. You establish a relationship with another individual, and someday way out in the future, you got your own kids to worry about. And that kid is sick and they're not feeling good and you have to take them to the doctor. You're going to want to have some type of medical insurance coverage for that. Or else you're going to spend a significant amount of your salary out of pocket paying for that. And that's going to suck because kids are expensive. As they get older, they become more expensive. They want cars and the latest and greatest iPhones. And they want to eat at Panera every other night because it's awesome and it's better than your cooking, Dad. So I want to go there. Things cost money. And none of that stuff's going to get cheaper in your lifetime. That's just the way life works.
Luckily, I'm an excellent cook. Everybody wants to eat my house.
That would be the way to go. You're also going to want to know what happens when you don't work anymore. And many people don't think about a retirement system. Many places require their employees to put money away and save it for a later date. There are still a handful of individuals that get what's known as a pension or a benefit in the future upon retirement for that. Law enforcement is one. Teachers are still one. So those things are important. Again, not on your very first day of the job because you're not thinking about retirement, but all of these things. And our retirement system is fantastic. Couple other things and I'll be done. What should you be doing now? Whether you want to be in law enforcement or not, if I had to sit back in that seat years ago, this is some of the stuff that I now believe to be incredibly important. All of this stuff is pretty simple. You're still learning most of the things about life at this point in your career. And after you get out of high school and go to wherever you go, you figure out a few more things and you continue to learn as you get older. But most of your life skills are going to be developed right now. If you were to bring your class list to me and I were to look at it and you had the opportunity to take that class right there in any way, shape, or form, you should be taking Spanish. Now, you do not need to know how to write a book in Spanish. You do not need to go to Mexico City and have a conversation with individuals on the town square about life. But some simple Spanish skills and some very basic understanding of the language is greatly beneficial in the year 2023. Whether you live in Iowa or anywhere else in this country. When I was in high school, I took 2 years of French. You know why I took French as a foreign language? It was the only foreign language offered in my high school. To this day, and you can tell my French teacher, Mrs. Freeman, I said this, it is the most worthless 2 years of my entire life. Not one single day since graduating from high school have I ever spoken a single word of the French language. Because most people in and around Iowa don't speak French. We now use English, and a growing segment uses more and more Spanish. If you can show me as an employee that you're bilingual, you're going to be a fantastic person to employ because you're going to jump up the list. It's going to make that resume look even better. So just some basic Spanish. Anything you want to do, get some life experience, have a summer job, have a job throughout the school year. Again, if you're on the Explorers program, we still call it Explorers in Burlington PD, fantastic. If you're doing some stuff with the fire department, wonderful. If you're refereeing and umpiring Little League baseball games in the summer, that's going to look good on a resume. Because at some point during your Little League umpiring career, you're going to experience conflict. And you're going to learn how to deal with adults that are upset because you just called their little junior, who they're convinced is going to be the next Manny Machado. You called him out on strike 3 that bounced 3 feet in front of the plate. Anybody that learns to deal with the public early on in life, especially in controversial situations, typically make good cops later on. That's the things that I would recommend. But above all, keep your nose clean. You should do everything you can to stay out of jams and allow that resume and record to look pretty good. With respect to those responsibilities, we will continue to maintain that. Again, I put this uniform on every day, not only because it's my career and I enjoy it, but I also have the responsibility for the men and women that wore it before me. And those that will wear it after me will hopefully uphold that, and I have no doubt that they will. That's my little spiel. Anybody got questions, anything you'd like to ask, anything we didn't get filled out on your sheets, because I know those are important at some point after I leave your presence. Here, and then I'll come up here.
How would you say that law enforcement affected your family life?
Yes, so go back in the days. I'm the only cop in my family, still to this day. My family growing up were farmers. They're still farmers. My wife's side of the family has nothing to do with law enforcement either. This is being recorded, so if April sees this, she'll understand. Some of her family members spent a lot of time in cop cars, but typically it was in the back seat, not so much the front seat growing up. So if she sees that, she'll get a chuckle out of those things. Certainly there is an impact on family members. With social media and the presence of that, I'm not so sure that's unique to Iowa law enforcement or any law enforcement. Every job seems to be under the microscope if you do something wrong. So we've had some conversations about how that applies. You know, does it affect friendships and relationships that you establish? Certainly does. And can those change? They can. I've had many people that have said this to me. Hey, you know what? if I ever go out and I've had maybe a few too many to drink, and I'm driving home and, maybe I'm just right there at the border, I want you to be the one that pulls me over. And I'm like, well, why would you say that? Well, you and I are friends. And I was like, well, that's true. But if you think our friendship is going to impact my job performance, then we're not near as close friends as you think we are. Now that's a little bit heavy and a little bit hard to understand on a Tuesday morning. But don't underestimate or overestimate our friendship as it relates to my career. I'm not going to let you go just because we're friends. Now certainly there are some discretion things that you can use in advance of that. In a direct line of that questioning, this is one people have asked me before. Hey, if you ever pull your wife over for speeding, are you going to write her a ticket? Raise your hand if you think I'd write my wife. We've been married for 24 years. I'd write her a speeding ticket if I ever pull her over. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. How many of you think I wouldn't write my wife a speeding ticket? Nobody in the room. How many of you don't care? It doesn't matter. Perfect. No, I would never write my wife a speeding ticket. Now you're saying, whoa, that's not fair. You can't do that. Now certainly there would be some things that we could talk about. And if it's an outrageous speed or an outrageous situation that I encountered, I probably have to remove myself from that particular investigation, right? Because I can't be fair and impartial to her. We've been married for 24 years. I love her. She thinks she loves me. I hope she loves me. We got 3 kids.
Your couch isn't comfortable.
Right. So things of that sort I can't be directly involved in. If something, heaven forbid, she creates a felony situation by making a mistake, then we're probably going to be in that, husband-wife relationship and things of that sort that's exempt for what she may say or things. So, no, I'm not going to write my wife a speeding ticket. Again, those are just things from family perspective. All right, next question.
Why did you get into law enforcement?
Why did I get into it? Again, I'll go back to what I started with. Wanted to be a player in the NBA. Realized that criminal justice was a popular major at the college that I went to. And once I got enrolled in it, I actually liked it. At one point, I entertained going to law school, then realized upon law school entrance, there is no eligibility for athletics. So you can't play sports and go to law school at the same time, so I got rid of that. And then really what my heart was set on before coming to Iowa was being a conservation officer. I was going to be a DNR guy and enforce hunting and fishing regulations, do some things with boating because that was more my lifestyle growing up, and I was much more familiar with that than I was this aspect of law enforcement. Anybody else want to say one more thing? Go ahead.
What job did you hold at the agency you worked at? Like, what other things did you do?
Okay, so right now I am the public resource officer for District 13. So my assignment involves things of this, talking to young adults in a variety of classroom settings, driver's education. Some of you may have seen me speak at driver's ed. I do public events like the state fair, Ragbri, Old Threshers, anything in and around the community, National Night Out, down at the auditorium here in Burlington. So there's a lot of things specific to being a public resource officer in this assignment now, more so than the other stuff.
By the way, thank you for all your traffic direction on Ragbri.
Yeah, there's a Ragbri rider, you bet. One thing I didn't talk about, and one thing that hasn't been listed yet over here on the board of guest speakers, federal law enforcement. Those that want to go into federal law enforcement, I would encourage you to do that. Federal law enforcement is a good career. You're going to get paid more than any place ever in Iowa. But you also have to realize you're probably not going to live in the place that you're from. So if you want to work for the Secret Service, you want to work for the FBI, they're going to send you to places around the United States, and you are not going to get to determine where you want to go. You're going to go. So a former trooper that I worked with for several years is now the #1 guy for the President of the United States in the Secret Service. He has worked his way up from Vice President Pence to Vice President Harris, and now is assigned to the President in a variety of situations. But it required him to leave little old Iowa and move to Washington, D.C. And now he spends a lot of time on airplanes and traveling in and around the country. Typically, he's not flying on Air Force One, by the way. And that's something that he likes. Now he's got a family and young kids at home, and he's gone a lot. But so federal law enforcement is a good career, good benefits, great salaries, a lot of travel, and a lot of ways away. If you want to work for the United States Border Patrol, they're not sending you to Burlington, Iowa. We don't need Border Patrol agents in Burlington, Iowa. You're going to spend some time in the southern part of Texas. You potentially could be spending time on the Canada border. But more likely than not, knowing what we know now, you're going south. You're going to spend some time down there. Anybody else? All good? Well, again, I want to thank Mr. Carper for inviting me in and setting this up. I think it's a great opportunity. Whether you want to be a cop or not someday going forward is irrelevant, but just know that there's a lot of opportunities in the next few years for sure to get employed there. So thank you for having me in.
Guys, let's give it up for them.
Thank you.
All right, we do have a test tomorrow, guys.